Now, here's the mistake that everybody makes. The advice that everybody gets is, okay, so what you need to start doing is you need to start delegating.
And what I want you to do is I want you to start making a list of all the things that you're really bad at and that isn't very good. And I want you to, hire like an executive assistant and other people
to start delegating all those low-level tasks to people so that they can do all the low-level tasks that is low kind of per hour work. And now they'll do that and that'll free you up to do more high-level work. You've heard that advice, right?
Oh yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah.
Yep. That's really stupid advice.
Welcome to the Abundant Journey podcast, where we talk with incredible entrepreneurs who give world-class advice from their own journeys. I'm your host, Nick James, and I'm a commercial banker turned business owner, along with my co-host, Nick Aufenkamp. We want to help you grow and scale your business while not losing sight of what matters most. Join us as we learn from the experts what it takes to grow $1 million business.
Man, do we got a great show lined up today. Nick, how are you? Tell us what we're doing today.
Yeah, I am good. Thank you, man. I'm always excited about our guests, but sometimes we have a guest on that I'm like really, really excited about. And so Ryan Deiss is joining us. Ryan is a guy that I came across because all of my favorite people follow Ryan. He's like their favorite person. So I was like, oh man, I got to figure out who this guy is. And so kind of went down the rabbit hole. Ryan does so many things. It's hard to summarize. We could spend the next hour probably of me just listing off all the stuff. But in summary, manages 17 companies in a portfolio of $200 million holding group. You may have heard of him with digitalmarketer.com, which is a fantastic site for certifying digital marketers, and then Scalable Co., which is where Ryan is helping business owners and entrepreneurs scale their businesses, implement awesome systems. Anyway, Ryan, I'm so thrilled to have you on, man. Thank you for taking some time to join us. How you doing today?
I am great, and appreciate you having me. Appreciate the kind words.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're coming to us from the great town of Austin, Texas, right?
Yeah. Austin, Texas. I was here before it was cool. Back when it was still weird.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and we're both from the Portland, Oregon area, and so there's been the kind of age-old debate on which city is weirder and where that whole thing.
You win.
Oh yeah.
Portland win. You crushed us. Yeah. You were weirder before and stay weirder longer.
That's right.
We have normalized dramatically, much to the chagrin of many of the old-time Austin residents. I graduated. I grew up in Houston and went to school at the University of Texas at Austin and never left. So it's been weird watching the city grow over time, and it kind of became this tech hub, entrepreneurial hub. It's been cool. It's been a fun place to live and raise a family.
Yeah. Right. Austin has really grown up and matured, whereas Portland has not. I would like to say that it's the compliment to own the weirdness banner, but it's not. Anyhow, it's interesting with you mentioning just your story and background. That's one of the big things that I wanted to get into and start off the conversation with, because when I first came across your profile on X, in your bio, you talk about your focus is on helping folks scale your company without sacrificing your soul. And that totally resonates with who we are and our audience. And I just want to hear more like how you got into this entrepreneurial space, with an emphasis on where this idea of not building in such a way that you lose your soul in the process really came from.
I got into entrepreneurship by accident. I think that's probably true for a lot of people listening to this. I didn't set out to launch a business. That wasn't necessarily my plan. I wasn't even in business school, funny enough. I just needed money. My freshman year at the University of Texas, I met a girl, and I knew within the first couple of weeks of dating this girl that she was probably the woman I was going to marry. And I know that sounds weird, by the way. I fully acknowledge that. And I want to make it clear, I didn't tell her that, because I knew, again, that's freaking weird. But I knew, right? I was like, this is probably the one. And so I'm thinking like, all right, I met a girl, probably going to marry her, going to need a diamond ring for that. Diamond rings are expensive. I need to figure out how to make some money. And like, so what am I going to do? I already had a part-time job that was kind of covering, rent and stuff like that. I should start a business on this newfangled thing called the internet. It was 1999. Like Google's a science fair project still at this point, but whatever, Michael Dell started Dell Computer Company a few years earlier from literally the dorm room across the street. Why can't I do it? That's kind of the thinking, and truly I was like, I could probably set up a little website and start selling things from it. I didn't think that it was going to become anything. I was like, if I could just make a little bit of money, maybe I can save up for long enough and get this girl an engagement ring. Fast forward a couple of years, I get the ring, I get the girl, and that little website had ballooned into a real live business. Wow. And so here I am, this accidental entrepreneur, and I had to figure out, okay, what do I do with this thing now? I would like to pretend like I just had it all dialed in the beginning. That as this thing grew and as it scaled, I was like God's gift to business and, systemizing everything perfectly. But that is not how it went. And as the business grew, in the early days, I enjoyed a fair bit of freedom. I largely worked from home. I was, made it to, as we started having kids and our family grew, I was able to make it to all the kids thing. I was that dad that was at all the things. And it felt really, really good. But then the business hit a level. It hit a point of scale. It hit a point of growth where it got bigger than me. And the only way that I knew to keep up was to work harder and harder. And I remember there was one year, I actually had not one, not two, but 3 different companies on the Inc. 500 and 5,000 list, which sounds really cool.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's like, ooh, wow.
Wow, look at that.
I get introduced when I go and speak, and they'll be like, ooh, multi-Inc. 500 and 5,000, founder. It's like, yeah, I didn't just have 3 companies over different years, not just one company, multiple years, 3 companies the same year. Is everybody impressed? Well, you shouldn't be, because I was completely freaking miserable. And by the way, 2 of those companies went completely out of business. We can talk about that if you want to, because growth doesn't fix everything.
Yeah.
Again, different story. But that year, I was awake and had left for the office before anybody was, had kind of woken up. I was getting home after everybody was already in bed. And I was essentially sacrificing my health. I was sacrificing my family. I was sacrificing my sanity at the altar of scale. This business that I had started originally so that I could get a ring for this woman that I loved, right? The business was a means to an end. And then I wanted to grow the business so I could provide not just for her, but for this family. This business had now become the very thing that had taken me away from them. And, one night it reached a breaking point. I remember coming home again, well after midnight, pulling the car into the garage, tiptoeing through the living room so as not to wake anybody up, and rounding the corners to my master bedroom and seeing, a little light coming under the door to the master bedroom. And I just remember thinking, my stomach I remember thinking, this is not good. She should be asleep right now. This is not good. And I kind of slowly turned the handle to the door and I walked in, and there's my wife, and she's sitting up in bed, and it's clear that she'd been crying. And she just said, she's like, look, you can keep doing what you're doing. I know who I married. You can keep doing what you're doing, but you can't pretend like you're doing it for us anymore. And y'all, that broke me.
Totally.
That broke me. And so when I talk about scaling your business without sacrificing, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what I was doing. And I wasn't just sacrificing my soul, I was sacrificing everything that I supposedly held dear, for, I'd convinced myself that I was doing it for them. And I think as entrepreneurs, that's the lie that we tell ourselves, but it is a lie. Our businesses are built to serve us and the people we love.
Yeah.
And if at any point in time that changes, something's gotten very, very, very out of whack. So that's what I mean by that statement.
That's a powerful story. And part of why it's so powerful is because I think so many entrepreneurs can identify themselves within that. In the conversations that Nick and I have had with so many folks, it's a recurring theme of like, I built this business because I wanted freedom for myself, and I ended up building my own prison cell. Like I am now enslaved to the thing that I thought was going to bring me ultimate freedom. And now I'm curious, like that's a huge pivotal moment to see your wife up crying, and what a powerful thing that she said, you can't keep pretending that you're doing this for us. So what's the next step for you in that moment? What changes?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing that I said was, "You're right, and I'm sorry," which I'm glad that that's what I said.
Yeah,
and I'm because it's not what I wanted. My initial response was, what went through my head was, "How dare you? I'm working so hard for us," and I'm glad that I didn't let those words come out of my mouth, because again, that's that defensiveness that is really just a mask that we wear, because we now have co-opted that identity that is, again, just a mask.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I don't know how to fix this yet, but I'm gonna work on it. And it'll start tomorrow. And I just made the decision right then and there. At 5 o'clock, I was going to leave. No matter what, At 5 o'clock, I was just going to leave. I was going to start by just making it home for dinner. And I was going to figure it out later. So it simply began with a decision that I was going to give my calendar back to the things that matter. I believe that as human beings, we show commitment in two ways: our wallet and our calendar. Show me where you spend your money and show me where you spend your time, and I'll show you the things that matter to you. And so right then and there, it's okay. I'm not going to leave until my kids leave for school, and I'm going to make sure that I'm home for work. Now, this stuff come up sometimes, and I had to be a little bit late. Yeah, but I was going to make sure it was the exception, not the rule. And so that's where it began. Kind of the next step then was my wife and I, at the end of every year, I'd say, okay, when do we want to do family trips? We don't have to know where we're going, but let's block it off on the calendar, right? So you get kind of first dibs. And then we would do that again around June or July. Like, let's do it for the rest of this year to make sure it's still good, and for the first half of the next year. So that's kind of another ritual that we did. So it started with the calendar. But at some point, I really had to look at the business itself and realize that just operationally, it was broken. Because operationally, it was completely and utterly dependent upon me. Every aspect of this business was completely and utterly dependent upon me. I can tell you, though, there is a happy ending to the story. Like, that's not how it is today. I don't want to leave everybody hanging. Like, it did get better. It does get better. We can talk about how it got better. But now it is, home for dinner. Not every night, but most. I mean, look, we're still entrepreneurs. Crap is still going to come up,
right?
Like, that's still what we signed up for. And again, my wife gets that. She says, she's like, I know who I married. I get that. I understand that. Wage earners sometimes have to pull late nights. Human beings, we get that. But is it the exception or is it the rule? And one of the things that I do every single year, pretty much every summer, is I take a 30-day vacation. One of the things that I believe is, if you can't take off for a full 30 days, you don't own your business owns you. That is the test for me. If you can't take off a full 30 days, you don't own your business owns you. I ask entrepreneurs all the time, does the money still show up if you don't? And if the money doesn't show up, if you don't show up, then you don't have a business. You actually kind of have a job. You're not a business owner. You're self-employed. You don't own a business. You own a job with kind of a crappy boss. And that's okay for now. You just have to ask, is this how you always want it to be? If it's not how you always want it to be, then it's time to start making some changes.
Yeah. I think that's super helpful as you continue. And one of the things you talked about earlier is just believing that lie. Where my mind goes to folks who are just getting started is there's a recognition that early on, as you're growing the business, you're wearing most of the hats. You have to do the marketing, the sales, maybe product, maybe distribution, whatever it is in whatever industry you're in, you're the guy. And talk about, the transition in, that maybe that first million is, hey, you're doing a lot of it. But once you get past that, at what point did you recognize, hey, I need to start delegating. I need to start offloading some of this workload and start trusting other people? Because I think sometimes entrepreneurs believe the lie, well, nobody can do it better than me, and I'm just got to be the guy. And I think that's a false narrative as well that people believe.
Yeah, business does occur in phases. So kind of the first phase, the launch phase, this is when we're just trying to see if anybody wants what we're selling, right? This is where we're just trying to achieve basic product market fit, right? Does anybody want what we're selling? You had an idea, and now you want to know, will anybody but my mom and my old college roommate buy this thing? And this is one of those areas where, yeah, it's hustle and grind, but you can really only do so much work because you don't really have that many customers to serve. So it's frustrating as all get out, but you're not really spending that much time because there's nothing to do because you don't have any of those pesky customers hanging around. But and that, by the way, is where most would-be entrepreneurs stop. At the first moment of friction, when they launch something and it doesn't immediately sell, they just give up and they go back. So I will tell you, if you make it past that point through the launch phase, you've already done more than the vast majority of what I would consider to be a entrepreneur, not a true entrepreneur. You've already done more than they would ever do. So that's that first phase. Now that phase, like I said, it's painful, but it's not actually that much work because the work doesn't begin until the customers show up, the clients show up. Phase 2 is the growth phase. This is actually where it's the most work because you're right. Phase 2, the growth phase, now things get nuts because it does start to work, right? People want what you're selling. And now you're kind of in this this beautifully vicious cycle, this chicken and egg thing of I got to sell it. Crap, I got to fulfill it. I need to sell some more. I got to fulfill it. And it is this kind of and the thing is, it's chaotic, but it's also kind of fun. And the thing is, for those of us who are entrepreneurs, this is kind of the most entrepreneurial of the phases. And the mistake that we can make is to over-identify with this phase. And that's exactly what I did, because this is when we look the most superhero-ish. This truly, in this phase, is typically from about 100,000 to about 1 million. 100,000 to about 1 million is this growth phase. And I say it's about 100,000 to 1 million because most people can't make it past 1 million, and many will stall out before 1 million because they never shift into a different mode. They never shift from founder mode or entrepreneurial mode into CEO mode. They'll never shift from driver mode into builder mode. And that is the big shift that needs to change. They have to shift their identity. They have to die to the very thing that made them great and successful at phase 2. And that can be hard. And that was the case for me. Now, not to brag on myself, but I'm going to do it anyway, because in bragging, I'm also kind of saying what a freaking idiot I was. I got well past 1 million, right? I'm a pretty high performance individual. And I was, again, willing to completely abandon my family, which most people aren't, for years at a time. And so I got multiple businesses well past the $1 million range. We had businesses into the 4, 5, 6. One of them was approaching $10 million in revenue, basically on the back of myself and a couple of business partners, and I guess a couple of key employees that we had completely Stockholm syndromed. I mean, the fact that they were willing to work as hard as they were willing to work, I still don't get it to this day, right? No systems, no nothing. We were still fundamentally in that growth phase. But that's why 2 of those businesses completely imploded. Right? So, and what did they do? They normalized back down to that sub $1 million level, because you cannot break through that point until you shift over into this new mindset.
Yeah. That's immensely helpful. And I think the picture of building a business around yourself, is a helpful one when you think about making that transition, because if everything in the business is built around you as the founder, as the key like linchpin piece, then the idea of moving yourself out of that position probably feels like blowing your business up. Like it's such a fundamental shift and change that it's terrifying. And
especially when I want to say something in the beginning, it's essential that you do it.
Yeah.
It is exactly the right advice in the beginning, that you do everything, right?
Yeah.
Build it around you, do absolutely everything, hustle and grind. That is exactly the right advice once you achieve product market fit. It is exactly the perfect thing to do. And yet it is exactly the thing you at some point must stop doing. So yeah, you're right. It's painful. It's the freaking worst.
It's funny because it's like the advice, like the easy thing that you want to tell people is like, well then, don't build your business that way from the beginning. Don't put yourself in the center of it. But to your point, that's the wrong approach. So I am curious then if there's some nuance of ways that business owners ought to prepare for that transition so that when they're in that crazy growth phase, they're also anticipating like, hey, I'm going to have to move into more of a CEO position. I'm going to have to eventually transition this thing so it's not so dependent upon me. Are there strategies that folks should start, at least have in mind during that crazy growth phase to make that transition a bit easier?
Yeah, absolutely. And it should start at around the $500,000 mark, right? So if you can address this before you have to, then you don't have to stall out and burn out. Most of the clients, I mean, you said this, that at the Scalable Company, what we do is we help companies that are at about 7 million go to 10 million, right? And that's true. In reality, the reason that we help companies at about 7 million go to 10 million is because it's at about 7 million, sorry, 7 figures go to 10 million is because it's at around $1 million, $2 million when most companies stall out.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to address this at about $500,000, they would never stall out. They wouldn't really stall out. They would just kind of keep going. So it's at around about $500,000 when you need to take a step back from your business and you need to start looking at it holistically. Because in reality, all businesses only do 3 things. We make stuff, we sell the stuff we made, we fulfill the stuff we sold. There's not a business on planet Earth that does not do those 3 things.
Yep.
We make stuff, we sell the stuff we made, we fulfill the stuff we sold. Now, if it's a service, you're typically not having to make a lot of stuff all the time. You learned how to do whatever it is that you do. And so you're largely living in the selling and the fulfilling, right? Now, what will make you great in the beginning is you're really, really phenomenal at one of those areas, and you're pretty good at 2 of those areas, right? You're going to figure out the other 2. So what you need to start doing is handing off those other pieces bits at a time. Now, here's the mistake that everybody makes. The advice that everybody gets is, okay, so what you need to start doing is you need to start delegating. And what I want you to do is I want you to start making a list of all the things that you're really bad at and that isn't very good. And I want you to, and I want you to hire like an executive assistant and other people to start delegating all those low level tasks to people so that they can do all the low level tasks that is low kind of per hour work. And now they'll do that and that'll free you up to do more high level work. You've heard that advice, right?
Oh yeah. I've heard it.
Yeah.
Yep. That's really stupid advice. It sounds like it should work. Here's why it's bad advice. Because you think that what you've done is you've traded all of these low-level tasks to other people who, you know, their per hour rate is lower than yours. But in reality, what you've actually done is you've traded these fairly easy low-level tasks that you could kind of do in your spare time when you sort of should take a break anyway for a new job and a new profession called manager.
Mm-hmm.
Managing entry-level employee, which is really freaking hard.
Yeah.
Especially
when
if
you frame it like that, this sounds like a terrible idea. Who would wish that upon themselves?
Yep. But wait, it gets worse because when that is kind of hard and we don't actually get the freed up time that we need, because those people are kind of struggling. They've got a lot of questions for us. So they're kind of coming back to us. Hey, you got a minute? You got a minute? I don't really know how to do this. And so we're managing this person, but still half the time doing their job for them. We're like, I need to free somebody up. So what do? We hire another entry-level employee who can then do some of this stuff, except the same thing happens. So now we've compounded and we've doubled our management duties. So now we're basically kind of spinning all these different plates. We're even less efficient than we were before, because not only are we doing all the same stuff that we were doing before, but we're managing two people and kind of sort of doing their job as well. But oh, wait, our business is still growing. And so the overarching tasks have gotten harder. Don't do that. What you need to do is go back to the core functions in business. We make the stuff, we sell the stuff, we fulfill the stuff. You're really, really phenomenally great at one of those things. Those are the core value drivers in business. You're really great at one of them. You're competent and functional at another one. Hire someone to do the thing that you're functional at, but hire somebody at a higher level. You're going to have to pay them more. You might have to pay this person $100,000 a year. They might make about as much as you right now. But what they're going to do is they're going to allow your business sometimes to double. Right?
Yeah.
When you hire higher level people, and believe it or not, they pay for themselves much faster. They actually have the ability to ROI themselves. And so often we hear these things like, oh, but I'm going to hire this person and they're going to cost $100,000 a year. And we think that as though like the second we hire them, $100,000 is going to get sucked out of our bank account. You realize that people come with a 12-month finance plan, right?
Yeah.
Interest free.
Hey, now you're talking banker language.
So don't hire for your absolute low-level task, because you're just trading low-level tasks for what is frankly a high-level task called management, and not just management, but management of low-level people. Think about those core business functions. Hire somebody who can completely own one of those core business functions that you're good at, but not great enough. And what scale looks like is beginning to document, systemize, and then hire people to run those systems.
Man, that's super helpful. And to maybe go a different direction with this same point, what would you say to the business owner who maybe is in that rut, is in that, oh, shoot, I've taken this advice. I now am in this situation where I am spinning my wheels. I'm doing management. I'm still doing half the other work. How do you maybe backtrack some of that? It sounds like you had to start doing that when you had that conversation with your wife. And, this has been your journey of learning and educating yourself through this process. Where do you start? How do you backtrack?
Well, a lot of people's businesses have gotten so complicated that they really don't even know how they work anymore. Right? In the beginning, it starts off very simply. You've kind of got one way of getting customers or clients, and you sort of have one basic product or service. And so you got one way of fulfilling it. And so the business is fairly simple and everybody knows how it works. But then you hear about this new way of acquiring customers and clients. So you start doing that as well. And then the old way doesn't work as well. So you try some new options for that. And so you kind of have a couple of different variations of that. And before long, you sort of have this giant mishmash of all these different ways of, again, getting customers and clients and fulfilling customers and clients. So the very first thing that I would encourage anybody to do, and this is the first thing that we do, whether we acquire a business or if we're working with a client, you have to get a visual picture, number one, of how customers happen, how clients happen. We call these value engines. You can call them business process maps, but we will literally get a pad of sticky notes and a whiteboard. And we will get the first sticky note and we will say, okay, how do people find out that you exist? We run Facebook and Instagram ads. Great. We'll write Facebook and Instagram ads on the sticky note and we'll put it in the upper left-hand corner. Okay. And, they're done when they buy this product, right? And so we'll purchase whatever their product is. That'll go in the lower right-hand corner. So we got the beginning, we got the end, we go back to the beginning. Okay, cool. So when somebody sees this ad, then what happens? Well, then they go to this landing page. Cool. Landing page. Draw an arrow from the sticky notes landing. Then what happens? Well, it depends. If they opt in, they go over here. If they don't, then we're going to retarget it. Okay, do a little, and you can create a visual map of how customers happen. Now, this is really, really important because oftentimes people can tell you how they get customers, but they can't show you. And it's not until you visualize that you actually start to get a grip on business. If you will do that, both for how you get customers and how you fulfill, the relief that you'll get, and I've seen this now dozens and dozens of times working with entrepreneurs, they go, oh my God, that's it. There's so many things we're doing that we don't need to be doing. I don't know why we're doing it because it's not that. Oh, this stage right here. Well, I know I could come up with a lot of ways that we can improve that. Like all of a sudden it just becomes so clear because it's really hard to optimize until you first visualize. Just as human beings, we're really bad at optimizing in the abstract. We've got to visualize it. And we're so in the weeds that you've got to get up to 30,000 feet. And so that is the first step. Then what you do is you take audit. You go through step by step, stage by stage, and you say, what are the really important steps and stages that we absolutely positively cannot afford to screw up? High propensity for human error, high repetition, right? Let's make sure those are real freaking documented. Like that's where I want my SOPs. That's where I want my checklists. You don't need to document everything. I get that that's what like books like the E-Myth talk about. You don't have to do it. You just need to document the critical. So let's make sure that we got those documented really, really, really well. We're going to audit it, only document the critical. Then you go back and audit it again and say, who is uniquely accountable for these things? Who's going to do this one? Who's going to do this? And again, we're just looking at sticky notes right now. Sticky notes on a whiteboard.
Yep.
Who's responsible for this sticky note? Who's going to make sure that these ads get done? And who's monitoring? Okay, what about this? Who builds those landing pages? What about this one? What about this one? What about this one? What you're going to find as the entrepreneur, me. And so the question that I always ask is, which sticky notes do you want to give away first? Is there anybody that you're already paying money to that you can just give that sticky note to, that you just haven't given away to? Here's what not to do. Don't just go out there and hire an operator or an integrator or whatever you want to call it as like some magical unicorn hire that's just going to do all the stuff for you. Those people don't freaking exist.
Yeah.
Okay? They don't exist.
Bursting bubbles right here, man.
They don't exist. At some point, you can have an operator when you actually have functional leadership. I'm not saying that you can't have a number two, but this idea that like, I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't know what the heck is going on. If it's your business and you don't know what the heck is going on and you think you're going to hire somebody from the outside to figure it out, you're crazy. You're fooling yourself. No, it happens one sticky note at a time. So who's the person that can take over some of these sticky notes? And again, start with those high leverage things that actually matter and begin to hand it off. That's how it happens. It starts by auditing your value creation process and then handing it off one sticky note at a time after you've systemized. The mistake that people make is they hire the people, but they don't give them the system. And what we found time and time and time again is good people don't fix broken systems break good people. You got to go systems first, then you hire the people to run the systems, and magically it starts working.
And that system building piece, it's funny, like how essential that is to entrepreneurship, and yet how few founders really see themselves as system builders. Because like you said, it's like I had this great idea for a product or a service, and I built that and found product market fit, and I never had to think about all of these systems and whatnot. So one, I appreciate the simplicity of getting a visual on it, using something as benign as a Post-it note. I think that even that in of itself helps everything feel more manageable. So I love that. It's as I put myself into the shoes of making that hire that you're going to entrust these really important pieces of your business to. We can talk about one. Yeah, it's financially, it's a huge commitment to make. But I also think that for some founders, there's an insecurity there, that imposter syndrome that they're battling. And it feels like, man, if I bring somebody else on that I'm acknowledging is better at these things than me, am I going to lose control of my company, or am I going to get somehow ousted from that? As you've worked, one, yourself in so many different companies, and two, with so many different founders, what are the kind of mindset pieces that you see the most successful founders cultivate when it comes to bringing other people on at a high level and handing off, delegating those big tasks? What kind of personality traits do they intentionally cultivate that make them successful as the business grows?
My goal anytime we make a hire is to ensure that they're better at that sticky note than I am. That's thing number one. I want to make sure that for that particular sticky note or that set of a couple sticky notes, that they're better at it than I am. And so apart from me being worried that they might be better, no. They need to be better.
They have to be.
They have to be better. So completely flip your mindset. And here's the thing. It's your company. So they don't get to, as a result of them being better, turn around and be like, well, you're fired. That's not how it works. Okay. This is not, business is not it's not a democracy. It's a benevolent dictatorship. Okay. You got the equity, so they can't fire you. They can't necessarily oust you. So just right off the bat, if you're worried that they're going to be better than you, I want to flip that. That is quite literally the point. They need to be better than you, but they're going to be better than you at that one little thing. And this is exactly the mindset shift that needs to occur. In the beginning, you're the best at everything. If you want to go from growth to scale, what you now need to be is the worst at every little thing. And what we say, the phrase that undergirds everything that we teach here at the Scalable Company and that I remind myself every day is, the more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is. It's just a fact. The more valuable you are to your business, the less valuable your business is. Because if you're the most valuable person in your business cannot be sold without you attached to it. So it's pretty much valueless. It's valueless to a buyer, and it can't be separated from you. So it's not all that valuable to you either. The only way somebody's going to buy it is if you come along with it in terms of an employment contract. If you get hit by a bus, it's not very valuable to your family. So your mission should be, over time, to become the least, quote unquote, valuable, and I'm throwing up the air quotes for those of you who are, listening to this, person in the company, and to replace yourself with a lot of people who collectively are more valuable than you. Now, with that being said, my goal when we're hiring is not necessarily to only hire like A players and rock stars. The goal really should be to build a team and to build the kind of systems to where it doesn't require them. If you have really great systems in place, then you don't necessarily need to go out there and get only ninjas, A players, and rock stars. Now, the nice thing is if you have great systems in place, guess what? A players and rock stars want to work for those kind of companies because they want to be set up for success. Yeah. So you wind up getting both. So I would just say you want to get people, you want to clearly define the role. The mistake that people make is they don't clearly define the role that they're looking for. And so they try to hire somebody who's kind of like them. And that's the opposite of what you want, right? Yeah. You want somebody who's really good at that thing that you need done. Yes, you want to like them. They need to be somebody that you want to hang out with, especially in the early days. I'm big on that. People will say, it doesn't matter their personality. I think when you're growing your team, it should be people that you want to hang out with. And if you find that you're just not jiving with them in the interview, we won't hire them. And that's not a very popular thing to say right now, especially in kind of this cultural climate. I don't really care. The team is just too small. If I don't really like it, if it's not somebody that I want to hang out with, if I'm like, it's not something, we don't hire them. So I think that's there. But you're looking for competency and then just what's the vibe factor.
Why do you think so many business owners are intimidated by doing that? Why do they hesitate for that long? What is it, an ego thing? Is it, is it a control thing? I mean, what is the reason that people don't make that shift?
I think business owners have told themselves they're bad managers. They're bad at management. I'm bad at hiring. I think they've told themselves that, and so they believe it. And they told themselves that in part because the first couple of people they hired, they probably did suck at it. Just like the first couple of times they did anything, they sucked at it.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's completely unfair. Like, right? I mean, and especially when you consider what I said earlier, which is the first couple of times you hired somebody, not only was it the first couple of times you did it, so you didn't know what the heck you were doing, but you also probably hired an entry-level person who's really difficult to manage. One of the easiest things in the world to do is to manage somebody who's a freaking professional who knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? And so we need to change our thinking around that. You're not a bad manager, right? Mm-hmm. You just need some development in that area. They also, I think, wrongly believe that that's no longer entrepreneurship, that it's less fun. I've never had more fun than when I get to work with functional professionals. And by functional, I mean they really know marketing and they really know sales and they really know product and they think all day long about that. And I can walk in and strategize with these folks and they're going to take it and run with it. And that's all they think about. And you collaborate and they then just go and do the work and they come back and you're like, that's freaking awesome. And like, you didn't have to do it. That's amazing. Like that's so much fun. Yeah. Like it's beautiful. And so, but we think that, if we're not doing it ourselves, that somehow it doesn't count. That's not true. Again, that's an identity issue because that's what we had to do in the beginning. And so we think that that's the only way that we get credit for the work, but that's, it just isn't the case anymore. Right. We have to make that shift and we have to make that change. And I think that we're also just afraid of learning something new. We call it second mountain thinking. When you make the shift, 0 to 1 million is the first mountain of business. And then if you're going to go kind of past 1 million, it's not actually a taller mountain. It is a completely different mountain with completely different rules, completely different tools required, a completely different playbook. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are just afraid to learn a completely different playbook and play a completely different game because they were so good at that game. And I know how to play that game. I don't want to learn a new game. And I get it because that can be scary. What I'm here to tell you is this other game, it's worth learning. Yeah. This other game is far more fulfilling. This other game brings a lot more wealth and a lot more freedom. But yeah, it's a new game with totally different rules. And everything that made you great at that first mountain is going to really hold you back at that second mountain.
Yeah. Well, and I love the way that you put that together a moment ago of just with by becoming, as your business gets more valuable, you as the CEO and founder need to become less and less valuable, less and less important to the day-to-day operations of the business. And how that ultimate test is what you do. Can you go away for 30 days and essentially shut off and still be making money and business functions as normal? Because as a testament to the systems that you've built and that's how you enjoy the ultimate kind of freedom that I think every entrepreneur dreams of. But yeah, it's good, a good reality check that, hey, the rules are different. And what got you to $1 million is not going to be the same thing that gets you to the $10 million point. And unless you're willing to sacrifice your soul and absolutely kill yourself trying to get it there. But we know the misery that creates.
Even then, you'll stall out at 4 to 6. That's just no man's land. Everybody understands that's no man's land. You can't. You're toodles.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to, with the time that we have left here, kind of shift to even something a bit more practical. And this is just being sensitive to the time of the year that we're in and thinking about the business owners and entrepreneurs that are listening in. Strategic planning and end of the year planning. This is kind of the time that everybody starts to think about, all right, what are the goals for 2025? What are we wanting to do in and with our business? And I know you've got some thoughts on annual planning that are a little bit contrarian. And so I would love to just hear how you lead your businesses through end of the year planning. Is it significant at all? What do you do? And what would you recommend business owners avoid?
Man, I hate annual planning. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Annual planning is a spork. It just is not doing anything. It is too short of a time frame to accomplish anything of real specific, anything of real significance. But it's at the same time too long to actually be predictable, right? I mean, I think about all those people who made all these beautiful annual plans, in December 2019. Come on, right? Like it just,
right.
Everybody does it. And most businesses' annual plans look way more like New Year's resolutions. And if you think about when do we do our annual planning, we do it around this time of year, in November, December, when we're also like at peak hopefulness. It's like, next year's going to be different, right? Look at what we're going to do. It's like going grocery shopping when you're hungry. It just is like a bad idea. So
that resonates with me right there.
I've just found that it's not particularly helpful. I don't know about you. I did annual planning for years. We achieved our annual plan, I think, about approximately never times. And I don't really know anybody who ever has hit it consistently. And I know a lot of successful entrepreneurs. So when there's something that everybody touts so religiously, and yet nobody really has success with it, it just kind of tells me it's a crock of crap. So I don't know. Like I don't do it. So here's what we do that does work for us and that we have been doing for about a decade. We plan out in 3-year cycles. So that I like to think in a 3-year cycle, because to me, 3 years I've found is long enough to do something really meaningful and significant. A business, if it grows just 24%, compounded growth over 3 years, doubles. 24% compounded growth year over year, 3 years in a row, it will double. A lot of people don't, because you think like 24%, like that's not that much. You compound it, we're double. We're double, baby.
Yep.
So I like that. You think about the projects, the initiatives that you can get done in 3 years.
Yeah.
We can do some things in 3 years, but at the same time, I don't get into these like 10-year big, hairy, audacious goal kind of things, because at some point it just becomes pie in the sky, right? It just kind of becomes entrepreneurial arts and crafts time. Like, let's vision board this kind of thing. It's like, give me a break. So I don't know. I've never found that to be all that motivating. So 3 years to me, we've just always found that to be a really good sweet spot. So that's what we do from a general planning purpose. And so what we will do for all of our companies, we will pick a time, and it's somewhat arbitrary. It's usually around the time when we acquire the company or start the company. And typically, if it's a startup, we don't do any strategic planning for the first couple of years of the business because we don't know anything.
Sure.
We don't have any freaking clue. And so to do any kind of strategic planning, we just think is somewhat arrogant. Like we don't yet know how we're creating value. I think the very first thing that you need to do is what I talked about before: document and visualize. How do customers happen? How do you fulfill once you got them? Until you can do that, I think it's arrogant to do any type of goal setting and planning. First, answer the question of how you create value in the marketplace. Then let's talk about your goals. That's just kind of one of my things. So we will at some point in the life cycle of the company set that 3-year target. We're going to set a revenue target and we're going to set a profitability target. Okay. That's it. We're not so much getting into kind of like the nitty gritty. We will roughly kind of think through, in 3 years, what do we see from a product line perspective? We've kind of got different categories that we'll think through, like how we get there. Like, what do we think the business will look like from a team perspective and things like that? But in general, revenue, profitability. Then what we do is we break that 3-year target into 12 quarterly chunks. And we've got a very simple kind of spreadsheet tool that does this, where it just kind of says, okay, if this is where we're going to be revenue profitability wise, what would need to be true from just a linear perspective? If this is our starting point today, revenue profitability, this is where we want to be in 3 years. What does growth need to look like if it were perfectly linear quarter over quarter to get there, if we got those 12 quarters to get there? So now we generally know for the next 12 quarters, what needs to be true in each one of those quarters for us to hit that goal. And then what we do is we do quarterly sprint planning. We have found that from an execution perspective, 90 days is the ideal time frame. And so instead of doing annual planning, we do 90-day sprint planning. So we essentially take the year, compress it into 90 days. And that is absolutely how we do that. So right now, across all of my companies, we are absolutely doing strategic planning, but we are doing strategic planning for the first quarter. That's what we are doing right now. And that's what I would invite, by the way, everybody to do. Okay? Think about Q1. And I would, by the way, also invite you to do this personally. If you want to set a New Year's resolution, don't do that. Set a Q1 resolution. Most people have abandoned their New Year's resolution by the end of February anyway. So set a Q1 resolution. Give yourself permission to learn during that quarter and then to reset, because priorities change as you take in new data. Yeah. So why commit to goals that may very well change for very good reason over the course of that 12 months? We know in general where we want to be. Then we're gonna move forward. We do incidentally give ourselves permission to adjust our 3-year target if there are significant changes every 4 quarters. So funny enough, we do kind of give ourselves a little bit of permission to quote unquote cheat and kind of give it an annual check-in. But that's kind of all we do. And then the 3-year target just kind of gets adjusted on a rolling basis. That is our process.
Selfishly, I got to ask the question. I just bought a service business, and Nick, being a realtor, both of us have some seasonality. How does seasonality play in? Because you've managed and owned so many businesses. As you try to spread those goals out and do the quarterly goals, how are those adjusted based on seasonality? Yeah. So one of the things, if y'all would be willing to do it, I did a YouTube video where I kind of walk through the tool that we use and actually link to the tool. So everybody can have the tool for free. It's our 12Q planner. You guys can have it as well. There's 3 columns. So the first column is just a straight line that shows like if you were going to quarter over quarter have that growth, what would it look like as a straight line? But yeah, growth is never a straight line. All businesses have some kind of seasonality. And so the middle column is projected. And so you can look at that and you can kind of project out your seasonality. You just want to make sure there's going to be times where you're above the line, where you want to be, and times where you're below it. You just want to make sure that you finish where you need to finish. And then the third column, the column on the far right is actual. And so that's how you're able to stay on track. So it's basically straight line, projected, and actual. So you're giving yourself kind of permission to project out the seasonality. But that's awesome. Important. You're doing it intentionally. Yeah. We don't want any revisionist history kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right. And listeners, you can find a link to that in the description and show notes. We'll definitely have that down there for you. Thank you, Ryan, for putting that together. And I know you've got a bunch of amazing resources out there and give away a lot for free. So I do encourage listeners to check that out, as well as to just check out everything on your YouTube channel and the Scalable Company page. It is kind of amazing just with growing a business the way that you have. I think if you were to go back and talk to somebody that's in their very beginning stages and just try and give them some encouragement as well as something to not do. Maybe this will feel repetitive to other things that you've said, but it's kind of like a going back to yourself when you first started your company. What kind of advice are you gonna give that's maybe less practical and just more of like, hey, avoid this and do this to become the person that you ultimately want to be?
I'm going to give you an ivory tower answer, and I'm going to give you a hyper practical answer, if that's okay.
Of course it is.
The ivory tower example, be very intentional about your identity at each stage of the entrepreneurial process. And try as hard as you can to not even identify as an entrepreneur or a business owner or a founder or a CEO. The life of an entrepreneur, a founder, a business owner is change. It just is. Your job, by definition, your role is going to change. If at any point in time you decide that this is who you are, that is the moment that your business will stop growing. It's the moment you will stop growing. So when a business owner tells me that, oh yeah, I don't want to have a team because I just don't manage people. That's just not something that I'm willing to do. To me, that's like a parent saying, I just don't change diapers. That's not what I do. Man, you had the kid. You signed up for this thing. All right. You birthed this business. This is a part of the game. And what I'm here to tell you is there's intense reward and joy in it if you will just suffer through some of the, more challenging transitionary times. So be very, very thoughtful of the stories that you tell yourself about yourself, the words that you use to describe yourself, and as much as you can, try to disassociate yourself from your business, because your business will have ups and downs. And if you ride that roller coaster with your business, it's going to be very difficult. I am very, very, very fortunate and very blessed to have been married to a woman now for over 20 years who just simply will not let me be down for too long. I will never forget one night, we had an incredible crushing blow in a business. I'm not kidding. I thought that there was a really good chance that we were going to go bankrupt. I mean, it was bad. It was really, 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 really bad. One of the only times in my adult life I can remember crying. And I'm sitting on my couch, like literally crying because I think that this business is going to go under. And my wife sat there and listened to me whine and moan and complain for probably a good hour. And then she just got up, looked at me and said, well, you'll figure it out. You always do. And went to freaking bed. I'm telling you, if failure in business equates to failure in life, it's going to be a hard road. So be very intentional about your identity. I wish somebody would have told me that earlier. The last bit of advice, and this is incredibly practical, watch your cash flow and pay your taxes. So many business owners don't set aside money for taxes, me included. I got $250,000 in debt to the IRS when I was very early in business, and it set me back years. I didn't pay taxes, y'all, because I didn't know I was supposed to. As silly as that sounds, I thought if I spent the money, that I didn't have to pay the taxes. I started this business in college. I didn't take accounting classes. I didn't know how any of this stuff worked. And I remember getting a phone call from my accountant saying, hey, did you make any quarterly payments this year? Why would I do that? Well, it turns out you had a really good year last year. I discovered that that's not good when when your CPA tells you had a good year last year, especially when it's, Sunday night and taxes are due the next Thursday. That was not a good feeling. And tax management and cash flow management is critical. More businesses die, and I would argue every business that dies because it runs out of cash. It's as simple as that. If you have cash and you still got ideas, you got fuel, you can keep this party going. You can just keep trying. You got more at bats. You can keep going. If you run out of cash, that's when it all goes away. So the thing that I got really, really, really good at after that, I got really good at cash flow management. I knew where every single dollar was going. Money hit the bank account. Once it hit that bank account, it was immediately going into a tax account. I knew exactly how to do that. I was going to have an operating account that was always going to have at least 1 month OPEX in it. Everything over and above 1 month OPEX, I was going to have a savings account that was always going to have at least 3 to 6 months of operating expenses there. Everything over and above that was going to go into whatever funds it needed to go into, including a distribution fund, because I wanted to be able to sweep some out to me from every now and then. I was very intentional about where the cash moved, and I've never had to worry about that since. So get good at cash management and pay your freaking taxes.
I love both of those responses, the ivory tower and the highly practical one. And I'm benefiting from that. I know that our listeners are as well. As we wrap up here, where are the best places for folks to connect with you, to learn more about what you're doing? If they want to check out the ways that Scalable Company can help them, where would you have them go?
Yeah, I would actually just go to my YouTube channel.
Okay.
YouTube.com/Ryan Deiss official. You can go to scalable.co as well if you're interested in kind of learning about what we do. At the Scalable Company, we work one-on-one with businesses to help them systemize. The worst kept secret the entire business of the Scalable Company is a front for private equity investment. Like, we basically want to get paid for due diligence. So we come in, we work with businesses, we help them systemize. And, if it's a cool company that we want to work with, then maybe there's an opportunity for us to partner together. That's kind of the business that I'm in these days. So we're not in the business of trying to sell our content. So that's why I finally just decided to just teach it all for free on YouTube. So if you just want the content and the information, go to YouTube. If you want help actually doing this stuff and implementing it, we can do that at Scalable. So those are the two places I would go.
Love it. Well, man, this has been extremely rich. I'm so grateful for you, grateful for your time. Thanks for sharing with us and with our listeners, and all the best to you as you continue to build amazing businesses and doing so in a way that you're not sacrificing your soul. I know that your marriage and family and you as a person are better for it. So thank you for helping us in that journey as well.
Yeah, likewise, gents. Thank you.
Everybody, that's a wrap. We'll see you next week for another episode.